This is a Socialist News and Views special interview.
I'm Nick Shillingford, coming to you from the Urban Cabin Studios in South Minneapolis with this special interview. I'm here in our new studio here at Urban Cabin Studios. It isn't ready yet, but we are going to be getting it up and running, and we'll likely be bringing you some video interviews from this studio either this winter or early next year. Our first interview will be on the free books table. So stay tuned. This week's interview was recorded on June 19th, 2025. What makes it special is that this time I will be the one being interviewed by the great Winkler-Morey. I in Minneapolis and her at the time in Sarajevo. Unfortunately, a short portion from the start of this interview where we discussed the free books table did not save correctly. So we bring you Winkler-Morey interviewing yours truly from just after I answered that first question. Here's the interview.
Well, let's you talked about with your book, free books, that breaking down those barriers, and I was wondering what just in general, first of all, just in Minneapolis and then in the U.S., which I haven't been in months and months and months. And I've been going from country to country and watching what's going on there.
Right.
What's going on in terms of being able to? Are things getting more narrow, or people being? How do we break down those barriers?
I mean, people went out to these No Kings protests recently. I actually didn't get out to it because I was doing graduation stuff with there was a graduation stuff for my wife's youngest sister. So I wasn't out there, but I convinced my mom to go out to one. She didn't go to the one at the Capitol because it would have been crazy to get down there and driving and parking and walking. But they were everywhere. So like she was gonna go to one in Highland Park, I guess. And then she ended up finding there was one in Richfield that was closer. So she went to that one. And like she had some video of like driving along the street and there was just people like as far as you could see. And then
everywhere, yeah.
And then she got back to her house and she said when she was going in, she ran into a neighbor and they were saying they had just been at one that was even closer. That was just up on like, I don't know if it was like 42nd and Nicollet or something, just in South Minneapolis. So they were all over the place. And so, I mean, it was a pretty significant development. And of course, in Minnesota here, that was right after the murder, the political assassination of the previous Speaker of the House, her husband and her dog, and the attempted assassination of another legislator and their spouse. So it was it was a little hard to say if it was like, I'm not sure if more people came out because of that or if it could have been even bigger, but I suspect that, probably at least as many people came out a lot. It felt like it was really important to be out again because, everybody was, telling you, oh, you should be scared, you should stay inside. But, like I remember from Ricardo Levins Morales speaking on his new book, The Land Knows the Way. We went to the book talk and he was just talking about how important it is not to cede the public space, because once you give up the public space and let them keep you from using it, it's really difficult to get that space back again. So I think that's super important. People, different people were asking us, my wife and myself, should we go to this thing? I don't know why it's being weird. Should we go to this thing? Is it safe? Blah, blah, blah. And we were saying, we think it's really important to go out. Obviously, you have to make decisions about your own safety, but our position is that it's, we would be going out if we weren't doing this other thing. And it's really important to be out there and be visible and be pushing back against all this stuff. And, I mean, I was hearing about it from a lot of people, even people that weren't like going to other protests and stuff like that. We're talking about going down there. Yeah, I mean, it was huge. I mean, there was people from all across the state, and there was, events, and what I think one thing said 12 million people or something like that across the US were out. So so that's pretty impressive. And people are, I mean, I don't, people, I mean, we already had Trump before, so we kind of knew what he was going to be like, but of course he's even worse because he, it's the second term and he thinks he has a mandate and all this other stuff. So yeah, I think a lot of people are pretty sick of him already. That there's even people that voted for him that, that are pretty sick of him already. So I don't know if that's the majority. I don't know. I wouldn't be able to say if that's the majority, but there's certainly a number of them that I think are like, oh, well, that didn't go very well. So, I mean, because it's already affected a lot of people. I mean, people losing their jobs and people getting snatched up out of their.
So you're breaking up again. I don't know, or your picture's breaking up again. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how that.
Maybe I'll turn the video off for a minute just so maybe it'll help. I don't know. Let me see if this helps. Can you still hear me? Okay.
You're saying important things, and I don't want.
No, I know. Yeah, I'm just trying to see if there's anything I can do. I don't know what the secret. Let me see if there's anything else running that I can stop running.
And I don't know if it's just my view or would that if it's
right. Yeah, sometimes I don't know either. Yeah, I've had times where it's breaking up, and then
you see yourself clearly.
I mean, can so far. You've frozen up. You've frozen up a couple times. I'm just gonna close some of this extra like Microsoft stuff that's running in the background that I don't think I need here. Let me see. But yeah, it's very interesting. And I mean, I think the 12 million people coming out on the street is like a sure sign that regardless of who's still supporting Trump, he has a significant opposition that has developed. And so I think, and I know in some places the protests were more political than other places. And I think a lot of places it was still really connected to the ICE raids and Los Angeles and sending in the military and stuff like that. So that seemed to be still a pretty prominent piece. And most of the even some of the Democrats are calling for like getting rid of ICE again, that they had forgotten about or disregarded for years on end now. And then all of a sudden that's one of their talking points again. So it's it'll be interesting. I don't know
I've been
what the next step is.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was just thinking because from here when I was in the US, I felt like I could feel that same, the water getting hotter and hotter and not noticing how bad things are getting. That metaphor, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like here I don't have that effect.
Right.
There's more shock.
Right.
And I'm wondering about how it's feeling there. I'm in a place that I'm not supposed to be because it's dangerous. And when I look at what's happening in the US, I'm like, no, much safer place.
Right.
And I was wondering, how's that feeling and what
yeah, I mean, every day it feels like something terrible is happening. And you talked about the heat. In addition to the political heat, we're going to be under a heat advisory here coming up over the weekend, and it's going to get up into the 90 somethings with 100. Feels like 100 and something with high humidity and whatever. So in addition to the and that all compounds, right? You're already dealing with all of this like trauma, and then it's like you can't cool down, you can't like really relax, and it gets really everybody's gets really tense. I feel like the No Kings kind of like I don't know, maybe give us a little bit of breathing room, but of course, and now Trump seems to be maybe like shifting some of his attention to some of the international terrors that he's going to bring to bear potentially. So it's like, I think, there's definitely has been a feeling of like helplessness that a lot of people have been feeling, at least the people that I know. And again, the No Kings kind of, there's two kinds of people. Some people seem to think it was like a complete waste of time because it was just a bunch of people standing around, according to them. And other people, see it as part of like an ongoing, pushback against Trump. I tend to think it was a positive thing. But then, what is the next step? How do we continue to push back? That's something we gotta figure out. But yeah, it definitely feels, and especially when, ICE was here, Immigration and Customs Enforcement was here in Minneapolis, and, people were getting manhandled, and, and then Isa Lopez was grabbed off the street in St. Paul, supposedly for, fighting FBI agents or something, and they, jammed her into a car and didn't say who they were and stuff like that. So it's like, there's this whole thing of there's already these federal agents not identifying themselves and grabbing people. And then also there's a guy impersonating a police officer who's going out and like assassinating lawmakers. And it's like, so what should we be doing about that? And, and unfortunately nobody is really providing us any answers. So I think a lot of people feel kind of, on their own. I mean, the Democrats are, for the most part, the vast majority are not really like giving us any solutions. They seem to think Trump is like the whole problem, but it's like ICE was around and used extensively by plenty of other presidents as well. So it's not like it's a new thing. So it's it definitely feels, but I think those chances to get together, like the No Kings and other stuff, it allows you to see that there's other people that are feeling the same way you are, and so that's how you can start to get your courage up, that you need to be participating in what's going on. So I think potentially, it's the sign of like turning a corner, but if it all gets co-opted, just back into the Democratic Party, then unfortunately it's not going to be a success. And I think some people are pretty aware of that, but there's a lot of new people that may go along with something like that and feel like if the Democrats just get back in power, then everything will be great. But it's like, they wanted to go, they potentially want to go to war with Iran too, and Iran as well. And so it's like, okay. So I don't know. It's a pretty, of course we had Biden in power this whole genocide so far up until Trump came into power, and, he was backing, he was saying, not only was, at least, I guess that's one thing. At least Trump tells us the things that come out of his mouth are ridiculous, but he says the things. Biden was telling us the whole time. He was telling us the whole time that, he's doing everything he can, but then it turned out he wasn't doing anything. So it's pretty sad.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, I bet you're people were asking my dad when he came back from England, well, why are you coming back? Why would you come back to the US after you're already in England? He's like, well, it's not that great over here either to be, yes. How things are going. Yeah. He's like, Keir Starmer's
Right. Whatever. It's worldwide, and
yeah.
I think we saw hints of that at this G7 conference, the way people were. Yeah.
It's not just Trump, and it's not just Israel.
Right.
It's not just Trump. It's a worldwide, empire, U.S. empire with plenty of proxies and, other, the U.S. backed Israeli regime, as we would call it if we were doing what they do with Iran.
I just saw something, I don't know if it was an ad or if it was not real, saying, this is the year for you to go to the US. And I found it really interesting that all of the 3,000 or 10,000 or whatever responses were laughter,
Right.
for the.
I know, it's great. Yeah, I remember
They
when
were like,
telling
no.
Trump, yeah,
So
telling
the rest
Trump,
of the world is looking and saying, no, this is not.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I remember they were telling
this
Trump
is.
that people were afraid
But
to come to the country.
the leadership around the world is still
Not there.
thinking yeah, right.
Well, yeah, they were. I remember they were talking to Trump, and they were saying people are afraid to come to the U.S. Oh no, we treat our tourists great, except for the one they just, the ones they just arrested
Yeah, right,
for
right.
supposedly being in the U.S. illegally when
Yeah,
they weren't even. They were just traveling and they had all their papers. So it's like, and I mean, U.S.
yeah,
citizens, are getting swept up in this stuff too. It's like,
right.
um, so it's clearly not about. It's not really about immigration. It's really about power and control and basically going after. Oh, there's a guy who was deported back to Australia. He said he was deported because he wrote an essay supporting the rights of Palestinian people. So
Yes,
it's pretty messed up.
yeah,
And he says he's
yeah.
gonna expand even more. He says he's gonna make them grab up even more people. So
So what's happening with healthcare? I saw that you were at a
it's
was
bad.
that seminary? I know
It
it's
was an
bad.
informational ticket. It was an informational
Details.
ticket.
It was
We've had both
informational.
we've had
Yeah.
both doctors and nurses out on informational picket just in the past little while. Doctors at Alina were out.
Wow.
I think that was their first picket since they unionized. And of course they weren't. It was really pouring with rain that day, and they weren't as prepared as people that have been doing that stuff for a while, so they kind of got drenched. But yeah, they're both out. I mean, they try to run the hospitals like we're all machines or something like that, and it's I've been thinking about it more and more. It's like if the nurses go on strike, right? They're gonna get
Hmm.
all these scab workers in there to run the entire hospital with
Hmm.
10 days notice. But yet,
Right,
if
right.
you go into somebody's office at the hospital and you say, "Why don't we have any of the staff that we need?" Oh, we're trying so hard. We had
Yeah,
an
yeah.
interview and the person didn't show up and this happened, but then in 10 days they can staff the whole hospital. It's just a
Yeah.
sign that they're not telling you the truth. I mean, healthcare is completely dysfunctional in the U.S. You
Hmm.
you get insurance. I mean, and then United Health Group has been scamming everybody. They're under, or have been under some kind of an investigation now. The whole thing's a scam to start with, and then even on top of that, you're freezing up a little bit. I don't know if I'm freezing up, but even on top of that, they're scamming you. On top of the scam they're already running with health insurance in general, they're scamming you, and so people pay for health insurance, and it doesn't even cover anything. You pay thousands of dollars every year, and then when you need care, you still need to pay a bunch of money, and then half the time it doesn't even cover the stuff that
Right.
you need to do. Um, so it's very
So what's happening on the picket line? What
oh
were the is there? I mean, were doctors and nurses on the same picket line, or
no, they
was
weren't
that
on at the
was?
same time. It was a day apart. The
Hmm.
doctors had an informational picket, and then the nurses had a picket the next day. That was across multiple hospitals. It was just doctors at Alina that were picketing the day before at a number of locations. Um, yeah, I mean they run the way that they make the doctors work is completely unsafe. There's doctors working like
Yeah.
24-hour shifts. They don't have the time they need to review the information. The insurance companies overrule their requests. And of course,
Hmm.
they're also dealing with the fact that, staffing is poor. I mean, staffing has been the ongoing issue for a long time. It's still an issue. And of
Hmm.
course, management doesn't bargain in good faith. They continually try to, stall, distract, and, not come to any kind of an agreement with the nurses. They don't want to give the nurses any power because they're afraid if they give the nurses even like anything, then maybe they'll want something else for the patients or want something else to run the hospital effectively. And they like to maintain the power. Like I said, even when I would win something, when I was in the hospital environment and I would win something, they wouldn't admit that we were the ones that had accomplished that. They'd always, oh, we're not going to do that. But then like, a little bit later, oh, well, we're so smart, we've decided to do this.
Right.
Same thing that they
Yes.
already had
Yes, that's
had
true.
decided. Yeah, it's not good. I mean, they want to run it with a lot of nurses. That's the other thing, with a lot of nurses that don't have a lot of experience. A lot of nurses have retired or they've left the nursing profession, or at least left the hospital. I left the hospital environment because I didn't think it was safe with the staffing levels. And so you have a lot of like new, people fresh out of nursing school trying to run all this stuff without the support that they need, which is really scary for them. And it should be really scary for the people that are trying to get care as well, that they are not going to be getting the care that they need. But yeah, I mean, the informational picket was just about how, management is not coming to the table in a reasonable way with the idea of actually, achieving some kind of a contract. They're always trying to take things away from the nurses, things that they've won previously. So yeah, it's they didn't get into too much detail of what were the specific sticking points, but I mean, staffing again is always one of those big things that that nurses are asked to have too many patients on their plate at once, and they're not able to deliver the care that they that we would expect to be able to deliver with the number of nurses and support staff that are in the hospitals. So it's really scary when you have a patient that you're trying to take care of in good faith, and trying to do everything you can to make sure that their needs are met and that they're getting the information they need and all this other stuff. And then you have a bunch of other patients that are potentially getting neglected because, again, you don't have the staff that you need to be able to answer call lights, or get folks up to the bathroom, or bring them the things that they need, or talk to doctors about stuff that they are having questions about, or get clarifications. So it's pretty risky. It's pretty scary, and we've lost a lot of nurses in the profession. But there's not really a shortage of nurses. There's just a shortage of nurses that want to work in
that
safe conditions. And so it's like, they'd rather just, it's a kind of a part of a deprofessionalization of a lot of jobs. Teachers are another good example of, feminized labor that is like deprofessionalized, and that, they're supposed to just, do the standard tests and follow the guidance, and they don't have any ability to actually practice the profession that they are professionals at. So yeah, it's really unfortunate, and in a lot of ways nurses have it better than other workers. So then it's like, what's going on in all these other places that don't work either. So yeah.
Sort of the same systems, but magnified.
And then all these cuts, these federal cuts are affecting everybody. The place that I work with, the place that my wife works with. I mean, all these different places are having some effect, especially like nonprofits and stuff from these cuts, and all this stuff coming at them at once. There's also the DEI piece, that Trump is saying, oh, you'll lose all your funding if you are doing anything related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So then all these different places are kind of like self-censoring, and once you start self-censoring, then you're going down this slippery road of then censoring what you're saying, and then eventually you're not really saying or doing any of the things that you claimed you were doing to start with. And I think that's happening, potentially to some extent in the hospital as well, although I haven't heard about specific examples, but I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, everybody's kind of scared of what
Mhm.
might happen. So
How are you how are you doing? How's your spirits? I mean, I look at what you're doing is so important,
yeah,
right? And you figured out a way to um, to not be doing what everybody else is doing, which is
right,
down, you're doing the opposite. So
right.
it sounds really, really good, and I'm just wondering how your spirits are.
Yeah, they've been pretty good. It is nice to, get books out to people and talk to people about what's going on. But yeah, I mean, it's different days. It's different. It's, it comes and goes, and it just kind of depends on how other people around me are doing, in my community and family, but also, um, yeah, I mean, of course, this whole ongoing, war and, stuff in the Middle East and then the US getting involved and stuff is, weighing on me quite a bit. It's not uh
Mhm.
there's nothing good that is going to come out of it, I don't think. Um, and it's just these wars just lead to more wars and but yeah, I mean, I try to stay in good spirits. I have medication that helps me with that to some degree. It keeps me from getting, like way down in the depths to the point where I can't like accomplish any of the things that I'm trying to do. But yeah, sometimes it's tough for sure. And you need to kind of, I mean, this stuff is ongoing. I've been doing this for a
Right,
while, and
right.
this stuff is ongoing. So you need to kind of find a way to have a long-term view of how things are going to develop. So that's definitely part of it. But yeah, on any given day, you certainly can get overwhelmed by what's going on. So I also try to take time for myself as well. I try to get plenty of sleep. That's good. Try to drink water and definitely getting sleep is a big one for me. I can definitely get pretty cranky if I'm not getting my
I've
my
been
sleep.
working
And then,
too.
yeah, exactly. And then you just are cranky at other people, and then then they are not in the best
Yeah.
mood, and it just continues. So, I'm trying to pass, the positive things along that you give the book to people, and then they're more likely to share the book, or you're giving the information to people, and then they can share the information. But yeah, it can be pretty depressing on any given day. But again, yeah, taking that long view of there's we come under attack, we being regular people or working people, and then we kind of find ways to fight back against that, or to slow that attack. And that's kind of like it's an ongoing thing. I mean, we had, Guantanamo, the Patriot Act, all this stuff that was happening in the past. There's a whole history um, of situations like this that other people have been through.
You
Um,
just put
to
Helen Keller's
keep pushing
speech.
against it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just I just had the one on, with the in behalf of the IWW with Helen
yeah,
Keller. And that is, yeah, it's like there's a lot of similarities, grabbing people,
yeah.
politically motivated attacks, grabbing people out of their beds at night, putting people on trains and deporting them to the desert or whatever.
I haven't just discovered these things,
No,
right?
no, these
No,
are,
no.
tried and true,
Tried and true,
tested,
right?
reactionary
Yep.
strategies, and we got to work on our own, time tested strategies. Of course, withholding labor power is a big one of those. I think some kind of, I mean, we saw the arrest of Huerta, the SEIU president in California. That definitely lit a fire under certain segments of labor that we need to be, doing more on this front. I hope we'll see some specific unions like leading the fight on that. That we need to be, finding ways to respond when ICE agents are coming to the community and trying to grab people off the street with no information about who's grabbing them, where they're going, why they're being grabbed, what their status even is. I mean,
Right.
I was born overseas. I wasn't a U.S. citizen until right before I went to college. So it's like I've been carrying my passport around on me, just like I figure, if anything happens, I got my passport. I can say, I've got a passport. I've got an American passport, whatever. I don't know, whatever you can do in that moment. But it's definitely,
Yeah.
always hanging over you there. But yeah, take the long view, find ways to work with other people in your community to build bonds and build support. And, that's it. I mean, I'm privileged in some ways. And so I like try to, make sure that I'm able to contribute and participate and support what's going on as much as I can. But it's never enough,
What?
It's never
Well,
enough. I mean, you can all
I,
you do stuff, but
I don't really agree with that.
no, I
I don't
know.
agree with that.
No, I know.
You
Well,
know,
I mean, it's never enough
thank
in the
you.
sense that
I think it is enough. I mean, I think what you're doing is enough.
no, I
You
know what
know
you're
what I mean?
saying. I know what you're saying.
It's
It's
not,
enough for
this
a
idea
big,
that we can always do more is not.
right. I'm not putting that on me as an
It's not
individual,
real.
but in a general sense, like
Right.
you do all this stuff,
Need a
but
bigger
still stuff that
movement.
we need a bigger movement. That's what I'm
Need a
pointing at.
bigger
That's the
movement.
key.
Right.
That's the key is we need a
So
bigger movement.
we need to keep reaching out and getting more people.
And we need to
Right?
make the movement accepting and inviting to people rather than the opposite of that, which it
Right.
quite often can be,
Right.
trying to eliminate or explain lingo and all this
Right.
other stuff that happens. There's this very insular activist
So
space.
what do you think about that in terms of like I just listened to your last
Yeah,
quote, and you had all these sources, this socialist source and that socialist
right.
source, and what do you think about people reacting, first of all, just to the word socialism, and how do you navigate that with people who are new to, wait a minute, that's,
Right. I feel like it doesn't have as bad of a connotation or whatever you want to call it as it did when I first got active.
uh-huh,
Like I feel like
definitely,
there's
yep,
definitely a huge group of people that now like see it positively. There's
mhm,
still a whole group of people that, or well, there's like a whole nother group of people that don't even really know what it is. Like they don't really like they don't really think about it or whatever. So I try to just kind of like put it in there along with the other news sources and this is like this is what's being said. These are the things that are coming out, but I'm always looking at ways to make it more accessible. Like I said, trying to explain acronyms is a big one that I try to do as much as possible, even if it I think people, it might be like straightforward. I
you
try
do a
to
great
put that in
job of
there.
that. And
Well, thank you.
I mean, that's unusual,
Oh, well,
because
thank you. It's something that I try to focus on. And yeah, it can be a little bit, a lot of stuff uh coming at you. Yeah, I try to find these short pieces like this Helen Keller piece that I put out, that people can potentially engage with. And then a lot of times I'll print out some of that stuff, have some printouts and other shorter. That's something I need to do more at the book table, is having some of the little more like shorter, like printout little
Mhm.
things. Um, but yeah, I think it's definitely not. I mean, back in the Obama era, they were always calling Obama a socialist, and it was kind of working to a certain extent on some people. I think that, oh, he's the socialist or whatever. But like I said, like I think that was kind of the end of it working very well, because I remember there was an event I was at when I was a member of Socialist Alternative. I can't even remember the event, but somebody came to the event and they said, uh, well, they were kept saying Obama was a socialist, and I looked up what is a socialist, and I realized, well, Obama isn't a socialist, but I am. So
Mhm.
then, so that was like kind of how they came to their. So it kind of
Yeah.
like backfired on them, I think, and so they've been trying to do cultural Marxism and saying it, whatever. But yeah, I don't know that it's
It's an interesting thing on this side of the Atlantic,
right.
because I'm in the Socialist Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and I've been in the Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka, and I mean, there's
Yeah,
these places that are called the Socialist Republic. They're all so different from each other,
Oh,
first of
sure.
all. And then I don't know what that word means, you know.
Well, yeah, and that's the other thing. Yeah, they're so different from each other. So it's like there's a lot of possibilities out there, I think, that, not to say that
And some of them are pretty horrible too.
exactly, yeah, not to say like they're all like, shining examples of socialism, but yeah, like socialism can mean different things to different people, and it does. And and I also talk to people that would identify themselves probably as like anarchists or something along those lines. So it's like, just trying to draw out some of the, it's like I try to draw out some of the disagreements or contradictions or whatever, but not like, usually not in too argumentative a way. Just try to like kind of like point to some of that stuff, or I even covered, I think there was two, for example, there was two different pieces that I covered on Iran, and one group was saying, they were highlighting how the Iranian regime has not always been the best, and how they oppose any repression by the Iranian regime. And then another one was just saying, we're 100% in solidarity with the Iranian people. And I don't know, there's different framings of, to be honest, right now, what we need to be doing.
I'm going to say that those two things don't have to be.
No, they don't. But they're kind of different framings, and it's like I think what we need to be doing now is trying out a lot of different things and seeing what's effective at drawing people into the movement, because that's really like the key thing that we need to be doing now. So we should be like theoretically trying out a lot of different strategies, but most of the groups are just mostly trying out their same old strategy or the new. They've decided it's a new period and they're going to try some other thing that probably isn't necessarily super engaging. I don't know. It's and I think about it on this side too as well. Like, it's not just like the people that listen to the podcast, but I try to get more people like involved in like making the podcast as well. So I get people reading content if that's where they can enter, or I have like perspective shows, where people can offer perspectives on different things. I've done a couple debates. That's a little tough. Getting all the people on the call at the same time has been difficult, even when there's like general, there's agreement. So that's a little tougher. But yeah, just finding ways that people can plug in, from like something as small as like reading a short poem to just listening to the podcast to then coming on and doing an interview, or reading something they've written, or so yeah, it's just a way. And it's kind of like, I think I have definitely people on the program that don't necessarily identify themselves as a socialist right away, but then now they've been on a program called Socialist News and then later they got I wonder if I'm a socialist or something. It's like, it seems like a lot of that stuff makes sense. And so I think, that's the giving people a home or a place where they can like participate in what's going on. And I just thought, like, so much of the stuff that's written by all these socialist organizations, they put a lot of effort into it. There's just somebody's doing a lot of research on what the heck's going on. And some of these articles, I don't think anybody even ever reads the article, unfortunately. So it's like, there should be some kind of like something participating at this level to like engage these different movements and different groups and different organizations in, some kind of conglomerate of information, or kind of like looking at the different perspectives. I don't know. It's there's like an ecosystem that should exist that doesn't really exist. And so, trying to think about how that could come to exist for the activist community.
And for people who want to suddenly discover that they
exactly.
something,
or something
they need.
It's I mean, we have people go on the mainstream media all the time and answer questions or say things, and the mainstream media does and says all kinds of horrible things, but but people still go on there and participate in some sense. And
Right.
that is also part of the whole thing of them buying into the propaganda, is that like after a while it starts to normalize things that
Yeah.
shouldn't be normal. And so, you
Yeah.
got to kind of go the other way of trying to
Exactly.
normalize the kind of society we'd like to
Right.
see happening, and asking some of these questions of of those in power, either directly or just putting it out there, like, why are we doing things this way? It seems really like a bad idea. So it's like, I don't know. It's but yeah, I've been working on it for a while, and I think things are. I mean, I'm always doing everything by the like skin of my teeth or whatever. Like I don't even know what I'm putting out for a show next week.
And are you doing it weekly? Is
Yeah, it's
that,
still weekly. I
yeah.
I like at the beginning of the year I had like a pretty good bunch of like interviews that I was using, and then it always kind of like drops off a little bit in the summer. It's a little harder to like people are listening a little less. It's a little harder to get people lined up to like do something or do an interview, because everybody's like,
Summer might be
this
different.
summer might be different. Yep. Sometimes they're traveling like right after Trump got elected. I don't know, for like 2 weeks after Trump got elected, I couldn't get anybody to really like talk to me or whatever.
Yeah.
I think they were all in bed, unless they had to
Yeah.
be at work or something. I think
Yeah.
everybody was
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
depressed. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's I just have faith or whatever that by that next week I'm gonna come up with something. Something is gonna come across my field of view that is then going to be like, okay, this is, and I try to do different stuff, right? Like um, there's a lot of the same things to cover, or, wars and deportations and all this other stuff, but I try to like, kind of get a different angle, or, actually went to school partially for, journalism and PR and stuff like that in my undergrad. So I kind of have an idea of, crafting something
Build something. Yeah.
interesting. I kind
Yeah.
of also see it a little bit as like art. Like the whole
Yes,
thing is like a little piece of
absolutely.
art that I'm like creating, like a little
Yeah.
encapsulated um thing. And
It's
then
like choreography.
yeah,
That's how
yeah,
I,
exactly. So I'm trying to get at some of these uh specific ideas and thoughts, um and it's great. Like sometimes it's funny because like when I'm actually doing the interview, sometimes I can't really pay attention to it as much as I would like to, even though I'm literally doing it. Because
right,
I'm
right.
like trying to look at, like
Thinking it
how much time do we have? And now I'm trying to look at this thing they just talked about and see if there's something
yeah,
there I want to talk about. And now I'm doing this. And so then later when I like listen to it again, I'm like, oh, that was a good interview.
that's good. Yeah.
They said a lot of good. And sometimes people go in like a completely different direction than I'm thinking, and that's really great, because sometimes they'll say something that just like, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's a good way to. So I pull little pieces from the way people phrase stuff,
Mhm.
and I try to bring that in. And then sometimes when I pose a question, I'll say, oh,
How
this.
is what,
Yeah, go
how
ahead.
is what is your editing process? So are you able to kind of uh, like take out the times when we froze and whatever? And
Yeah, so
what do you do?
for the interviews, yeah, I take out some of the, like, sometimes, yeah, I'll take out some of the ums and ahs, and sometimes if there's a long gap, or like there's like a mistake that I can like fix,
Mhm.
I do to get that. The interviews are like, they're like the easier thing in a way, because I can just like turn around and put it out, so I can like do 3 of those a month, and then I do the regular episode, like the one I just put out, which is like a news and then some kind of music, and then, pardon me, and then like a second section, which is a lot of times might be like a historical thing, or maybe it's a perspectives or something, like sort
Mhm.
of the idea is less like urgent or like immediate kind of a thing. But that definitely, yeah, that takes longer, because I look for all these news articles. I look for yeah, so I'll make like a list of these news articles and dates and links, and then I try to do it with like local and national and international in kind of in date order if possible. And then, yeah, this last week I put some more clips in there because, I just didn't think because I got the Helen Keller piece recorded. It was not the first person I had asked to record it. They ended up getting busy, but then I asked somebody else and then they said they could do it. So I just got that recorded on Sunday.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Just got that recorded on Sunday. So then it's like, okay, well, I've got this like 8-minute and whatever segment plus my intro and outro. And I try to keep the regular episodes to like 30 minutes. So I was like, okay, so I got like, I think it was like 19 minutes to work with or something. So I was like, I don't think I can write a 19-minute script and come up with all like 19 minutes of news. So I'm like, I'm definitely going to have to use some clips in there. And so I ended up putting it all together what I had. And then I ended up cutting, I cut a little piece where Melissa Hortman talked about the sick and safe time thing. It was like a little clip from Democracy Now! I'm probably might put that out separately as like a little extra thing. And then I cut a whole part. There was a whole part with like a Al Jazeera report from LA that I was going to put in there. But I cut it because it was a little longer and it was kind of about like a standoff between police and activists, and it didn't sound like it was like necessarily representative of everything that went on out there. So I was like, okay, this is the other part I can cut. But yeah, so the regular episodes are the ones that definitely take longer. And then if I don't have an interview, sometimes I'll do like a special report, which is kind of a combination of both. So a lot of times for like a special report, I'll have like a speech or something that I've grabbed at like a rally, but then I'll do some introductory like news items like in leading up to that speech. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes maybe I'll even pull like a historical thing that I think fits in. Like I did one on colonialism. And I grabbed like a Ho Chi Minh piece on colonialism, and I had some other little clips, and I put some news story. That was when a lot of stuff was like the New Caledonia stuff was going on, French colony. And so that was like a big thing. But yeah, I try to get stuff that's like up to date, but also the other thing is I try not to like 100% like feed into this 24/7 news cycle of like, you have to be talking about this particular thing today because like the only thing you're allowed to talk about is like the only thing you're allowed to talk about today is Trump's haircut or whatever. Like that's the only thing we're talking about today. So I try to get away from that a little bit, and try to make sure like that I got stuff. And a lot of times I'll have a couple interviews going, so I'm trying to figure out like, oh, should I put this one out first or this one, and trying to figure out like what's more pressing or what's more important.
Just from doing the Minneapolis interview project, and you don't have to give me examples, but do you ever have situations where someone says something racist or sexist, or you're like, okay, I have my standards, and I'm not
right.
I like the idea of giving you the full, it's yours, but I'm sorry, I'm going to have to edit that. And I may not even tell them that. I just take that out.
Right. I haven't gotten to that point so far. But I had a few like, I had somebody reading something. Oh, it says your bandwidth is low, but I don't know if it's. But I had somebody reading something that they wrote, like in a book, and there was the N-word was in there. And this was a white person, and so I was like, I was curious to see. Well, what are they going to say when they get to that part? They just said N-word, so I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wasn't sure what I was gonna, how I was gonna respond, and then when I had somebody from the SWP on, they were talking about, I don't know, poor old Trump and how they're going after Trump on some. This was before he was elected again, but that if they can go, they said something like, if they can go after Trump, they can go after anyone. And it was kind of like towards the end of the interview, and I did feel afterwards like I should have pushed back on that more. And I was like, that, well, whatever. But I didn't cut it or anything, but I was like, there was something else. I can't remember. There was some other thing that they had on their website. And I was like, is he going to go into this whole thing too? And then I was like, I don't know if I really want, but yeah, it does. I'm like, I've been right on the edge a few times. But I have not, I don't think I've specifically cut that. Mostly it's been like stuff that's like repetitive, or like especially with like with the perspectives, because a lot of times I put those out on regular episodes. So I try to, keep the whole thing from start to finish at like around about 30 minutes. And I usually say to people like, oh, maybe like 2 to 3 minutes, just talking, your perspective on this thing. And of course, nobody really sticks to time. So then where I wanted to have more people, I told them like a minute or something. And of course they still time, but it's like, so then I have to go in and like cut it at least a little bit. And so if they repeat themselves, especially, I try, like, I'll take that out. Yeah, there's big gaps, or they say a lot, I can take that out. And then, sometimes there's just weird things where you can't hear what they're saying or other things. So then I try to maneuver it so you make sure there was another time where, they like introduce themselves at the end for some reason. So then I move that to like the beginning. And a lot of times I'll try to say, this was edited for, length and clarity or whatever, you say. But yeah, so far I haven't had to, really do that. But again, I've been pretty careful with like feeling like I have a pretty good idea of a number of the things people are going to say before they get on. Like I said, they do surprise me sometimes, but so far their surprises haven't been like directly, overtly like racist. I mean, I guess there was, there, for the most part, I err on, just putting it out there, and then people will know they're racist, or that they have this blind spot that they're saying things that aren't really the best, or, sometimes I'll, push back on it in a certain way and say like, oh, okay, so, people would say that, what do you think? Somebody might say this, what do you think about that? But yeah, so far it hasn't been an issue, but definitely when I'm getting people on that somebody's like, oh, this person would be great, talk to them, and I really have no idea what I'm getting into, I'm definitely a little bit more like, oh gosh, I hope it doesn't go like really, really weird direction. But it's more like they're going to start talking about crystals or something, or how they have to.
Right. No, well,
that wasn't out there stuff.
The beginning of what could happen when I said racist.
Right. I mean, I did have one. We were lied to about 9/11. And that one, like, there was definitely some potential to go down some roads that
you didn't
particularly want to put out. So I really started down at the nitty gritty of like, they definitely lied about this.
Yeah.
This was a lie. It was documented in all these different places. So let's start from there and work our way out. And hopefully I'll cut it off before it gets, like way too far out there and we're saying stuff that is ridiculous. But
my thinking sort of developed, working on the Minneapolis interview project. And I just decided, look, this project does reflect me. People should know. And it does this. It definitely reflects you, and that's wonderful, right?
Right.
And it's not neutral, it's not it's not it's not a transcript, right? It's an interaction, and the collection of what you do reflects you, and that's a contribution, right? Not neutral.
Yeah, I mean, I probably would, edit something, but I haven't had to really do it specifically for that reason thus far. But again, like, the more removed you get from the person that you're interviewing, the more likely there is to be kind of a little oddities, or even,
Also, if people don't know you, then they don't know what you're. They may edit themselves knowing you, and then you don't have to worry about that, right?
That is true. I mean, and I definitely see that. There's people that
Yeah.
specifically don't say the word socialist, for example, like they'll get on there and they're explaining all these things and they don't say the word socialist. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. They're going in all this detail of things that could definitely fall under, socialist ideas, but they don't say that. They're shying away from certain words, and that's that's how they want to do it. That's fine. But it's and then sometimes, like I said, sometimes people that I don't necessarily expect to say something, they come on there. Now they're on this socialist show. They're like, I'm a socialist. So, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I've never heard you actually say that before. So now it's interesting to hear you say that. So it's, it is. It's a conversation. It's a whole process. And then just the whole process of like, how does it actually come together? Like, people that are more like, seasoned activists or whatever, a lot of times they'll just like jump on and do an interview. And then other times there's people that are like, well, we should probably have an introductory call about this and talk about this. Or that was another one. I did have one where, where I did this interview with somebody and I recorded it. And then afterwards they're like, oh, can we do it again? Because I want to talk about this and this that I didn't talk about, whatever. And I was like, okay.
No concept
so
of your time.
I did it again. Yeah. So we ended up doing it 3 times. This is not going to happen again.
Oh my goodness.
This is not going to happen again.
Yeah.
We ended up doing it 3 times and then they still didn't like it. So they ended. So I was on to other interviews. That's the other thing is like, I'm also like, it's multiple weeks.
Yeah,
so
you're doing
like you miss a week, then it's like, where's this going? I don't know. So it ended up, I was kind of like following up on a speech they gave at an event. So they ended up like just like re-recording the speech that they gave at the event, and then I used that later on in a thing. But yeah, I still have all those like interviews out there, like 3 hours of interviews or something about.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. Well, the other thing was that they were like, I think in the third one, they were like plugging this organization, but then they had like ended up not being in the organization anymore. So then they're like, I don't know if I want to plug this because I don't even think they're doing that. And I was like, okay, I'm just whatever. So, but yeah, I don't think I'm going to do the re-recording one ever again unless there's a specific like new development that I want to cover or something, because that was a big hassle and pain in the butt. So, but you learn as you go along.
Yeah, you learn as you go along.
So it's a process, but I'm always looking out for people. I've reached out, the other thing is I'm in like a certain space, and that space is not very famous and very local. And so I reach out to like, not like big names, but people that I that appear on Democracy Now! Or other things like that, and say, hey, could we talk? And plenty of those people never get back to me. So, I have to have other people that I can, but I have on occasion. There was a guy from the sunflower movement in Taiwan that was on Democracy Now! And then he ended up agreeing to come on and talk to me about how people were feeling in Taiwan at one point. So that was kind of interesting. There was a student at Washington University in St. Louis that I heard on the radio, or heard about him on the radio, was getting like penalized for supporting Palestine, and so I ended up connecting with her, and so that was another one where I like reached out kind of like out of the blue and connected. So there's been a few where people are cool to do it, but a lot of it is is like people I locally like directly connect with, or people I specifically know through like activist work. Because of course, if I'm putting something out weekly, that's the easiest way to get people to actually like, hop right on the show. So, if I reach out to somebody I don't know, then there's potentially a lot more like process to get through to go there. Yeah, I have like a few vague invitations out to people right now, or things where like, oh, we should talk in a few weeks, and I'm still trying to figure out if I want to, like, for example, like sanctions on what was it? It was it was the tariffs, the tariffs and stuff. And it's like stuff moves so fast. It's like I got this thing out about talking about tariffs, but it's like I don't even know if anybody's caring about tariffs right now. There's so many other like things going on that a person could care about. Tariffs is still potentially important, but I just don't know. And then, or it's like, then maybe I can frame it within like a larger context of something like maybe it's going to be about China specifically, but tariffs is going to be a piece of that. So um, it's a process, but yeah, I take stuff out at every step of the process to get it where I want it to be. But yeah, it's like usually on Tuesdays, I put it out on Thursdays. Usually on Tuesdays, I spend a good chunk of the day working on that. And then I put a newsletter out too. I'm putting my newsletter out. I put it out once a month. So that usually comes after my regular episode. So that's something I'll be working on this weekend. I'll be traveling.
And what day is your payday? I'm joking, but
Oh yeah, exactly.
can make a point.
Yeah. Socialist
Work all
news
day
and views.
Tuesday.
Socialist news and views hemorrhages money at every point along the process. Everything I do,
Right.
it's just hemorrhaging money. And then for my day job, I get paid monthly. So I, because I'm a consultant or something. So late.
It's important because
Yeah, I don't make any money
having done
from
that
socialist news and
myself,
views. Yeah.
people don't understand,
Yeah.
that it's like
I don't make any money. I have a YouTube channel too. I don't have any ads on the YouTube channel. I
Right.
don't monetize anything. So I consider myself, part of the movement. And so I'm doing this because I want people to know what's going on and hear what's happening. And, again, that's the other piece is like people don't talk, people are bad at talking to each other too. So, a lot of times they're like talking past each other. So if you can just get one person or something, to talk, then at least the person can sit and listen to what they're saying and they don't have any, opportunity to interrupt them because it's recorded. So you can actually hear what the person is saying. And then, I'm always inviting people to write letters or something too. That was something when I first put the podcast out, because I originally had it a long time ago after the Occupy movement for like a year. And then I put it on hold for 7 years and then I brought it back. And I did used to get more letters every once in a while back in the day because it was kind of like there was less noise to break through on the internet. But yeah, having people write little letters or thoughts, or even if somebody writes me a message about something, I'm like, oh, can I share this perspective on the show? So, somebody disagrees with something somebody else said, then, I mean, that would be ideal.
Yeah.
I try to talk as little as possible on the show. So I'm always trying to find ways for somebody else to say something. And then if somebody disagrees with that, then I can have that person say that thing. But every once in a while, we'll take we being really just mostly me, we'll take a position on something specific, but it's, but yeah, I dropped something. Yeah, some people have been on the show a few times. I try to, I send people books sometimes too. Especially people that have been on the podcast before, or if they've been on the podcast a few times. And we sent a bunch of copies of the Land Knows the Way from Ricardo Levins-Morales to people that we thought would be interested, especially people that have been on the program before. So that was really good. People really, actually, it's funny, we haven't even actually finished reading the book. My wife and I have been reading it together. I just realized we're like halfway through the book now. I thought we were halfway through the book already, but we just read some more this morning. And I was just counting the pages and looking, I'm like, oh, I guess we're halfway through now. But yeah, it's really good. So before we even got all the way through it, after the book talk and then reading it a little bit, we're like, oh, people should read this. It's more, it's definitely got that long perspective I was talking about, and it gives you places to have some hope about, what can actually be achieved by the organized people in a community. And that we've been fighting these fights for a long time.
Okay.
Again, it's not all new. It's not all new stuff. It's not all new tactics. It's not all new attacks. It's been going on for some time. So just making people aware of that. Yeah, I like to get different. I try to have people on the show from a whole host of different backgrounds. different ages. I try to have like at least half the show be, locally focused in some way or another. Have some local connection. But yeah, I try to have, people from all kinds of areas in different movements. But yeah, part of it depends on who agrees to actually come do the interview. So it's always kind of a mix of,
serendipity.
And of course, the people that are, most privileged in the society are also probably the people that are most likely to do the interview because they don't have like a million things. So you have to kind of like, you have to work to counteract that.
Right.
It doesn't happen on its own because, the white male, middle class, whatever, they have the easiest time of just getting on some random phone call whenever, and plenty of other people are struggling with all kinds of things. So again, you have to go through, there's a whole process, and sometimes I have to, we're schedule an interview and then it has to get rescheduled and then whatever, but that's just how it goes. Sometimes people are busy, and I don't shame them for not getting on the interview. I'm like, yeah, totally makes sense. When shall we reschedule?
How can we do
exactly? How can we do it? And I see it as collaborative too. Like if, I usually end with something where, is there anything else you want to share? But also beforehand, sometimes I'm like, these are the questions I got. If there's something in there that seems like it's missing, as far as, that's the other thing. Some people really want questions ahead of time, and some people either don't care or they're like, let's just hop on now and do it. And I'm like, okay. So some of the conversations are more conversational, and some of them are more, depends on how, complex the issue is too, like how much you want to make sure that you have. Sometimes I've gone back and forth with questions a couple times, like, okay, I don't think that really gets at, like I did one about legal, like, about disability rights and legal issues and stuff. And it's like, I really don't know anything about, I mean, I do more than the average person, but a lot less than a lawyer or anybody else. I don't know what the heck's going on or how any of this stuff works. So it's like, I had to rewrite my questions a few times, because I'm like, I don't think that really is quite accurate. Like even the questions have to be accurate, right? Like the things you're saying have to actually like make some sense. So you have to have some understanding of what you're actually talking about. And sometimes that's the whole thing, is trying to spend some time and figure out, what am I actually trying to get at here? Like, what do I actually want to get out of this conversation? And,
yeah.
But is that the same with you?
Yes, I've been thinking about that, trying to write about, the different countries that I'm in, and I'm sitting there stuck, and then I'm
Yeah.
like, what's the question? It's not just data, it's what's the question? What's important?
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, and a lot of these newsletters I've been writing, it's like, I really don't know what I'm writing until I sit down. Sometimes a lot of times if I don't know where I'm starting to start with, I kind of like frame it around the podcast from like the last month. So I'll put, okay, these are the podcasts I did. And then I'll start talking about like, this is what this person said. And then it'll kind of start to become clear, like, okay, here's like a connection I can make between these two. And this is kind of like how it relates to something that's going on now. Sometimes it makes more sense than others. And so it's like, or sometimes I focus a little bit more on one, but I love when you get to I don't know if that happens to you, but I get to the part in the writing where I'm like, okay, I know where this is going. Like I can set it down, and I already feel like I'll be able to come back to it and like finish it off, but I'm getting kind of like exhausted with it right now. And it's like, okay, this feels good. Like I know where I'm going to go with this, and I know it's going to like have an end, and I'm going to end it. But like when I first start, sometimes it's like, oh gosh, where is this going? And how is this going to, and then I make my poor wife look over it, because I'm terrible at commas and stuff in certain scenarios. And it's like, why did you put this here? Why this? He's like, what does this even mean? And I'm like, okay, kind of like just getting all the stuff out. And then it's like, I try to, it's so hard to edit yourself right after you've written it, because you read it however you wrote it in your head.
Yeah.
So you need to set it aside, but I don't really have the ability to set it aside, because I'm trying to get it out the door in a hurry. So it's like, it's so I'm always impressed with your ability to write all this stuff. It's like doesn't it's not
It's a
easy.
struggle.
It's not
Struggle.
easy.
I-
And framing it in a way that somebody would want to actually like read about it, like it's it's easy to just write down, oh, I did this and then I did this and then I did that, but is anybody gonna actually read that? And then you're like, no, I got to go back and figure out how this all
Yeah.
is going to. But yeah, I just try to do the
Yeah.
best I can and keep pushing ahead, and that's it's fun. I'll tell you another funny thing. I'll tell you a quick funny thing unrelated. I'm reading this book. I don't know if you know who Anna Louise Strong is, but I guess she was like she was a
Yeah.
kind of
1920.
journalist, and yeah, and she ended up being buried in China. She's buried. She was like a good friend of Mao. She was in Russia for a long time. She had concerns about Russia, but she didn't say anything. But then eventually she's like, I don't think this is quite right. So then she went to China, and then she really liked China while she was there. I don't know if she would have eventually come to other conclusions about China. She was there for like 10 years, and she was Mao's good friend. And so it was, but anyway, I was reading her book. She's got an autobiography that I'm reading because I watched a documentary on her from 1984. And it's funny, she calls herself motor minded. That's the word she used. To me, it kind of makes me think of like ADHD or something. She says she's motor minded, that she does things before she really thinks about them, and she doesn't really know where she's going with them, but she just starts doing them, and then somehow it all works out or whatever. And she's like, some people sit down and they plan and they think and they come up with all these steps. She's like, I don't do that at all. And it's like very much the way that I am as well, is that I don't exactly know where I'm going, but we're on this journey there, and it somehow happens. And I thought motor minded was a fun one. But if you said it now, they'd think you wanted to talk about motorcycles or something, or engines, but it was an interesting. I hadn't heard that phrase before, so. Yeah, it's already pretty good. It's really apparently she flew across the farm. Oh, it's called it's actually it's called the documentary is called Witness to Revolution, the Anna Louise Strong story, and then the we watched it on Canopy, which is like the library streaming service. I don't know if you can. I think you can watch it on YouTube. Oh, that's not the one. I Change Worlds, the remaking, the memoir of Anna Louise Strong. Apparently, she when she was growing up, when she was like 2 years old, she was carried across her farm by a tornado and deposited in a cow pasture or something.
Maybe that's why she's motor minded.
Maybe that's what did it. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting book already, and I've only read a couple of chapters, but she had quite an interesting life. And then I'll tell you, then at the end of her life, she had somehow she went to the Soviet Union, and she came back with some money. Nobody, according to nobody really knows how or where she got this money. She did have some family over there, and she had family that was like relatively like well off at one time anyway. Well, anyway, she came back, she bought this hotel. She ran the hotel for a while, and then later when she left, she ended up selling it at like a cheap price to this black family that ended up running it, even though it was in an area where black people weren't supposed to own hotels or something. But she sold it to them anyway, and so then they ran it for a lot of years, and then actually they think that's when she moved to the Soviet Union. That was out in like Seattle. But yeah, she's kind of an odd and interesting. I had never heard of her before I watched this documentary, so there's always new things to learn.
She was peripheral in my dissertation. So.
Oh, okay, nice, yeah. She's very interesting. Yeah, and she came from like a religious background, like her father was a pastor. So then yeah, she ended up having some conversations with her father about what a true Christian is and what they should be doing and stuff. And And yeah, she was quite a. I mean, she was raised in an environment where she like got all the things that she needed and thought everybody was like. That was another thing. Her teachers in the introduction, it says her teachers found her so odd because she always thought everybody had good intentions. And so even when somebody did something terrible, she would make up this really complicated reason why ultimately it was really they had good intentions in the end or whatever. And so she was always like positive about everybody, even if they were terrible to her or whatever. So that was also something she had to work on because then she kind of thought like maybe I did something wrong, so it's a pretty deep and interesting memoir explaining, how she thought about stuff, and pretty cool. Apparently it's only the first 50 years. I guess the other 30 years or something are in another book.
Another,
So
absolutely.
I don't know, any other questions or any other thoughts or
Um, well, I want to reiterate that what you're doing is really important,
thank
and I
you.
think it gets that, you know, creating, you're creating an archive,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And, people either listen now or they'll listen later, or, and you don't know.
Exactly,
And
exactly.
that's not what you have, that's not what you have control over, right?
Right.
What you have control over is the effort that you put into it, right? And
I've had
that's,
2 times now where I think somebody went through and listened to like every episode in a row because my numbers went from like whatever they are like weekly, and then all of a sudden they shot up to like 100 and something in one day, and I was like, okay, somebody binged all these episodes on in like a day and a half or whatever. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. So that's happened twice now.
it's fantastic.
And I've also had people reach out to me because they came across something. Like I had one where I had an interview with somebody who had passed away, and they reached out and said, oh, I don't have any recordings of this person, so it was amazing to hear their voice and stuff. So I was like, oh, okay, yeah. So the archive part is real and super important. Um, so where are you? Do you know? So how much longer are you in Sarajevo?
We are here for another 10 days or so, yeah.
And then where are you
We're
going to?
staying here 6 weeks instead of the month
Oh,
because
okay.
it is hard to get out of here
Oh, okay.
for political.
Oh, okay.
We wanted to go to Belgrade and to Kosovo, but um, the expense and the length of time to get those very short distances was just beyond my energy.
Sure. No, that's fair.
It's very interesting to discover just how, how the politics have created. Belgrade as the birds fly. It's 120 miles away,
Oh, sure.
and by plane you have to go to where Vienna,
Mm,
400 miles. I mean, it takes 5 hours by plane to get there.
wow.
It's absolutely insane. Yeah.
So where are you guys
But
going
same.
next after this?
So we're going to Riga, Latvia
Ooh.
next.
So do you have this planned out for a long time, or like how far out do you actually have things
No,
planned?
February.
Oh,
You want
okay,
to
that's
hear
quite
where I'm going
planned out till
next month?
February. That's pretty good. That's a pretty long time.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's
So
cool.
far, yeah. We have made the decision we want to do it another year,
Okay.
through end of 2026. So
And
we'll
then
see.
and then and then do you have an idea of what your plan is after that, or then you get to decide what
No,
you
no. I
do?
mean, that's part of what's keeping us on the road is we have no home and
Right.
don't know.
Haven't figured out what to do next. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you got through February anyway. Well, that'll be good. Be able to keep up and see what's going on. Well,
And I'm getting more and more clear about what I'm trying to,
oh, sure.
where
Are you gonna write another book?
I don't know. I'd rather do the free stuff and not
Yeah.
not
No,
trying
that's
to
fair.
sell myself.
No, I get
Right?
it. No, that's fair. That's definitely fair. It's yeah, it's too complicated to try to get into to try to buy into this whole system, and
Yeah.
you got to basically, yeah, sell your soul if you want to achieve
You don't
anything, it
want to do.
seems like. So you got to
We'll
find
see. We'll see.
ways to support each other and giving things away for free. And that's our special interview. Thanks for tuning in. Solidarity.
This has been a Socialist News and Views special interview.